Okay guys, so hello and welcome to Astrology. So this is actually my very first YouTube live stream, so I'm quite excited for this one. Okay, so in this live stream, what I am going to talk about is how this whole COVID-19 coronavirus situation is affecting the zodiac signs, and specifically how self-isolation will be affecting each zodiac sign specifically. So I'm sure most of you guys know that Saturn has entered Aquarius, and Saturn is going to be in Aquarius up until the 1st of July. Now, I personally feel that up until the 1st of July is more or less when this self-isolation period is going to be until. So up until then, we can expect most people, putting themselves into self-isolation and just experiencing, a different kind of part of life through isolating themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through how it's going to affect each sign individually based on that sign's traits. Then what I'm also going to do is I'm actually going to go let you guys know how the Saturn in Aquarius transit is affecting each sign's house specifically. Now, how it works with house placements and that kind of thing in horoscopes is I generally advise the person to follow the horoscope for their rising sign, because if you have to look at your actual natal chart and you have to look where your rising sign is and then where the other houses are in relation to that, it will be more accurate. So if you have, let's say you're a Scorpio with a Gemini rising, then the horoscope for Scorpio will be quite relevant to you, but the horoscope for Gemini will be more relevant to you because you have a Gemini rising and your chart layout is more, according to that. Okay. So firstly, I do feel that self-isolation is a very, very good thing. A lot of people will disagree with me, and the people that will mainly disagree with me are all the air signs. Because air signs can't go without socializing for a very, very long time. So the reason I feel self-isolation is good is because a lot of people, they try and find their answers, they try and find the meaning of life externally. So they're constantly, interacting with people, they're constantly going places, they're constantly doing new things, and that is how they try and find the meaning to life. However, a person really only finds the meaning to life once you start looking inside yourself, once you start spending time in introspection, once you start getting to know yourself, and that's when things actually start making a lot more sense to you. So I think that a lot of people are now obviously going to struggle with self-isolation because they don't know themselves, because they're not used to spending time by themselves, just dealing with their own thoughts, dealing with their own emotions and what they're going through. Generally, when a person is going through, a difficult time and they don't know themselves, they usually do something that distracts them, so they never actually deal with what they're going through. So I feel that self-isolation is a perfect time for, majority of people to start actually looking at themselves and start dealing with themselves, because there aren't that many distractions around to stop them from looking at themselves, if that makes sense. Okay, so my general opinion of this is that the air signs and the fire signs are going to be the two elements that struggle the most with self-isolation. And then the earth signs and the water signs are the ones that won't struggle that much, and it's kind of, nice to them. Okay, so I'm going to get started with Aries. So Aries people will generally not react very well to the self-isolation, but once they actually, get into it, they'll actually really start enjoying it, because a lot of your Aries people are very inventive. They're very good with their hands. They're very good at making stuff and that kind of thing. So the Aries people will likely end up creating and making new things, and they'll start enjoying that. So the thing is, the Aries people usually don't have time to, create, to make stuff, and now is a time when they'll do that. So initially they'll be a little bit annoyed because Aries people do like to kind of be involved, to be out there, to be adventuring, and basically just experiencing life. An Aries person can feel very, very, very uncomfortable, very uneasy if they feel like they're missing out of life. Aries people always suffer from FOMO. So yeah, that is basically, the sign Aries and people with an Aries rising, how it will majorly affect you. And then in terms of how the Saturn transit into Aquarius is going to affect you. So to Aries, Aquarius represents your 11th house of friendship and community. So Saturn is the planet that does represent limitations. It does represent restrictions. Saturn's a kind of planet that does not make things easy for you. It makes things very difficult. And wherever Saturn is, you're going to experience some kind of difficulty in your life. Now, having Saturn in the 11th house, so this counts for Aries Sun natives and Aries rising natives, you are going to feel like you can't connect with your friends. You're actually going to suffer a lot in terms of this because it is the 11th house. It's the house of community. So you're going to feel like you can't put yourself into the community. You're going to feel like you're being very restricted in terms of being able to develop your friendships, or even just, reaching out to your friends and that kind of thing. So for the sign Aries, because it does represent friendship to them, the Saturn in Aquarius transit, they are going to suffer quite a bit in relation to their friendships and, not being able to work on their friendships and actually see their friends and that kind of thing. Okay, then next up we have Taurus. So Taurus people are actually going to do really, really well with self-isolation. So because Taurus people are earth signs, so earth signs generally really enjoy being in their own space, being in their, own home, doing their own thing. One thing I can say though is that out of all three earth signs, which are Capricorn, Virgo, and Taurus, Taurus is probably the one that's going to struggle with it the most. So Taurus won't struggle as much as other signs, but out of the earth signs, they'll struggle the most. The reason for this is because Taurus people are also generally more outgoing. What I've noticed is Taurus females are more outgoing, but Taurus males might not be. So the Taurus females in particular are going to struggle with self-isolation because Taurus females really, really love connecting with people. Taurus females feel really happy when they're able to connect with friends and when they're around people they love and appreciate. So the females might have a slightly harder time than what the males will. Taurus people are also incredibly creative. So a lot of Taurians are likely designers, like clothing designers, graphic designers, or whatever the case may be. Taurus is ruled by Libra, which is the planet of beauty. It's the planet of peace and love and harmony. And Taurians have an ability to be very creative and to create very beautiful things. So what a lot of the Taurus people will end up doing is possibly creating art. So if you're a Taurus, the best way to deal with this self-isolation, damn, I really struggle with that word, is to possibly spend some time on the art that you've always wanted to pursue. So I know a lot of, us, we're really, really busy. Life is incredibly demanding, and it is very difficult to make time for the things that we really want to do. So for the Tauruses, this is the time that they can make time to actually work on their creative endeavors. Now for Taurus, the Saturn entering Aquarius is happening in their 10th house. Now, the 10th house is the house of career. It's the house of social status, and it's also the house of social standing. So in terms of their career, Taurus is the sign that is going to likely suffer the most right now. Because, like I said, Saturn is the planet of restrictions, and having Saturn in their 10th house does indicate that there is going to be many, many limitations and restrictions imposed onto them through this. So I know a lot of people will obviously, possibly lose their jobs or possibly have uncertainty regarding the future. Taurus people are probably going to experience the most uncertainty regarding their future because this transit is in their 10th house of, the career and work. Okay, so next up is Gemini. Now, Gemini is an air sign, and like I said, the air signs are the ones that are going to struggle the most because air signs do need to be constantly socializing. They do need to be talking to people. They do need to bounce their ideas off of other people for them to feel secure. An air sign finds it very, very difficult to feel happy and secure with themselves if they're not around other people, especially Libra. But I'll get to that later. So basically, with Geminis, you do get some Geminis that will be able to manage because Gemini is a mutable sign. So it means that they are very adaptable. They can adapt themselves. So a lot of the Geminis will be able to adapt themselves and they will be able to survive. They won't lose their minds completely. However, most of the Geminis are probably going to be texting like crazy. They're going to be video calling their friends like crazy. They'll probably be creating like chat groups with all their friends in, and they'll just be talking all the time. So what Gemini is likely going to do is they're going to keep talking to people, but they're just going to, like I said, do it digitally. And this is how they're going to basically keep themselves happy. Now, if a Gemini, does not do this, if they're not talking to people all the time, if they're not constantly, interacting, although it might be digital, it will be a bit difficult for them to be alone all the time with no human interaction whatsoever. Geminis have incredibly, incredibly busy minds, and they're constantly thinking of so many things. And the best way for them to deal with their busy minds and what they're constantly thinking about is to talk about it. When a Gemini talks about what they're thinking about, they feel so much better. Now, if a Gemini isn't able to talk about it, it's going to end up driving them insane. So I can say that the Geminis will probably struggle more than the other signs because, like I said, they have this need to constantly be talking, to constantly be communicating. Gemini is the sign of communication after all. So when it comes to, communication, and if their communication is being shut off, it's not a good thing. But yeah, they will definitely survive it. Okay, so then the Saturn in Aquarius transit is in their 9th house. So to Gemini, Saturn in Aquarius represents their house of spirituality, represents their house of education and travel as well as higher learning. Now, Gemini people will be impacted severely in terms of their travel plans as well as their study plans. So a lot of the Geminis would have likely made plans to travel or study during this self-isolation period, and they won't be able to anymore, and this is really going to get to them. There is going to be a halt and a stop to their study and their travel plans. So if you're a Gemini and you want to further your education, you want to study, it's going to be very difficult to do this right now unless it is something that you're able to study, online, or if it's like a self-learning subject. If it's something that you have to obviously go and attend an institution or something like that, it's going to be very, very tricky, and it likely will not happen. There is going to be a limitation put onto this. And the same counts for traveling. If you want to travel, you will not be able to. Okay, so then we have Cancer. So Cancer is a water sign that will actually deal with self-isolation extremely well, because Cancer does tend to isolate themselves quite often. Cancer is a very, very emotional sign. They experience so many emotions. There's so much going through in them that they actually have to remove themselves from people quite often, just so that they can actually work through their emotions and deal with them. It is difficult for a Cancer to deal with their emotions around other people, if that makes sense. So what the Cancer people are going to do is they are going to look more into their emotional nature. They are going to do lots of deep self-reflection during this time. And like I said, they're going to be very happy being able to do this. Cancer is also not an incredibly social sign. It is also, like I said, a more introspective sign. So the Cancer people will not really be affected by this too much. Your Cancer people have likely probably gathered a whole bunch of books already that they're planning to read, or they have a whole bunch of movies lined up that they're ready to watch. They probably are excited for this, and they've probably prepared themselves for this beforehand. So with Cancer, with Cancer, Saturn is transiting through your 8th house. Now, the 8th house is the house of personal transformation. It's the house of sexuality. It's also the house of death and rebirth, and the house of other people's resources. Now, what can happen with Cancers is that there can be somewhat of a halt in their sex life. So they obviously will not be as sexually active as what they usually are, because Saturn is in their 8th house. And like I said, Saturn restricts, it limits. And then also in terms of getting things from other people, getting help from other people, relying on other people will also be a bit of a tricky thing for Cancers. So if a Cancer does need to rely on another person or get help from another person at this time, it might be a bit difficult to get it, because like I said, Saturn is in their 8th house. Okay, so next up is Leo, and I think that Leos are going to have a bit of a hard time dealing with self-isolation, because Leos do require constant attention from people. Now, it's not that Leos require constant conversation, such as like Gemini and air signs, but they do need people to notice them. They need people to look at them, and they need people to see what they're up to, see what they're doing. So Leos are going to have to learn to just basically deal with themselves without getting validation or feedback from other people. Most of your Leos will also likely be too proud to actually say that they're struggling. Most of them are going to be too, they're too strong to say that this is tough for them, that this is hard for them. So even though Leos might be going through a difficult time, they will not show it, and they will not tell anybody this. They will definitely internalize it. Most Leos, if they were able to actually gather their family with them and that kind of thing while they're in self-isolation, it will probably be a bit easier. So if it's a Leo who's completely alone, then it will probably be very, very difficult for them. However, if they have some family members around, it will probably be just a little bit easier. Okay, and then Saturn has entered Leo's 7th house of relationships, partnerships, and marriage. Now, what can happen is that if you are a Leo that is single, you will probably yearn to be in a relationship, or you will probably feel very, very lonely because you're single and you don't have somebody to get through this self-isolation period with. You will realize that, having a person in your life now would have probably alleviated some of your loneliness. And then if you're a Leo who is in a relationship already, then what can happen is you are going to have to deal with your relationship. There are going to be issues in your relationship that are going to be brought up because you're likely in your partner's company every single day. And this is going to be a time where you have to face and address the issues in your relationship. Now, this can also be in relation to the issues that you have been suppressing in your relationship, the issues that you didn't want to deal with in the past. Now is the perfect time to deal with this. Okay, so the next we have Virgo. So I can definitely say that Virgos are probably the sign that are going to enjoy the self-isolation the most. Virgo is the sign that is represented by the Hermit. So Virgos generally prefer to just be alone. They prefer to do their own thing and not have other people in their space. Majority of Virgos actually suffer from social anxiety. So I can tell you majority of Virgos are actually really, really happy about this. So Virgo will most likely end up doing all the things that they haven't been able to do. So they're going to complete all their unfinished business now. So let's say they wanted to paint a room. They'll probably end up painting it. Let's say they wanted to repot or replant their garden. They'll probably end up doing this. So all the unfinished business that they haven't been able to deal with, they're going to be able to deal with now during this self-isolation period. And they're going to be so thankful to actually have the time to be able to, complete their unfinished business, because the world is usually so demanding on Virgos that they barely have time to do their own thing. So now they're actually going to be so, so happy to be able to do their own thing. Alrighty, then Virgos have Saturn moving through their 6th house of duty, service, and health right now. Now, out of all the signs, I can't say that Virgos are the ones that are likely to have more work than others right now. Because Saturn is, like I said, because the 6th house is the house of duty, service, and health, Virgos are going to find themselves serving people now. They're going to find themselves helping a lot of people now. So a lot of people are going to need their help, and they're going to have to give their help to a lot of people. I can say that I'm definitely experiencing this now because I'm also a Virgo, and I have been doing so many readings lately, trying to just help people get through this difficult time. So Virgos will have to serve people, and it might feel like somewhat of a burden to them that they have to serve people. But the thing is that they're the only ones that can really do this. They're the only ones that can really serve people, the right way that it needs to be done. So a lot of them are going to be working now, more so than the other signs. And majority of the health workers in this world are Virgos, because Virgo is the sign of Virgo is the sign of health. So you will notice that a very big portion of your nurses and your doctors out there, I would say at least 30% of them are Virgos. And as you know, doctors and nurses are still working. Okay, so next it's Libra. So Libra is an air sign that is represented by partnership. Now, out of all the signs, I do think that Libra will probably go through the most difficult time right now, because it's very, very difficult for a Libra to be alone. Libras do need other people in order to feel happy. What I have noticed is that most Libras really, really struggle to be on their own and to be alone for very long periods of times. Now, I need to comment on this though. Male Libras really struggle with this a lot. However, female Libras are able to adjust to it a bit easier. So your female Libras do tend to, isolate themselves every now and then so they can deal with their thoughts, so they can work through their emotions. And female Libras are somewhat more used to being alone than what the male Libras are. However, male Libras really, really struggle. Male Libras need people there all the time because male Libras really, really struggle to deal with their own thoughts. They need to basically dilute their thoughts through the thoughts of others and through talking through other people. Now, due to this, your Libras, especially your male Libras, are going to have a very, very difficult time during self-isolation because they are going to have to kind of deal with their own thoughts. They aren't going to be able to, delude their thoughts through another person and basically try and distract themselves through socializing with other people. They're actually going to have to sit and deal with what's on their mind now. The female Libras will probably use the self-isolation time to work on their beauty. So the female Libras will probably be doing their nails, they'll probably be doing pedicures, they'll probably be doing some face masks. They'll use this time as a time for self-care, and they'll use this time to make themselves more beautiful and a bit more better and a bit more alluring, so that when the time comes that they can be social again, that they're so much more appealing. So female Libras are actually using this time in their benefit so that when they're able to socialize again, they can just make so much more of an impact on the people when the people see them. However, female Libras will also have a bit of a tough time because, like I said, Libras do need people there. They need people in order to feel complete. So if you're a Libra and you're completely alone, then I would advise just try and talk to people as much as you can, through phone, through online and that kind of thing. And if you're a Libra who has a partner or a person that's in isolation with you, you probably won't be, you probably won't do that bad during this time. All right. Then Saturn is moving through Libra's 5th house, which is the house of creative expression, love, fun, and romance. So Libras are going to experience a halt in their creative expression as well as when it comes to romance and love in their life. So a lot of your Libras are Casanovas and players, and a lot of your Libras are always out there, flirting with different people, getting it on with different people. But the thing is, right now they can't do this. They can't go out there and get it on with people because people are in self-isolation. So there is going to be a limitation when it comes to their love life and their romantic life, as well as a bit of their sex life. And then also in terms of their creative expression, a lot of Libras work in the fields of creativity, and what's going to happen is they're not going to be able to express their creativeness. So, for example, if you're a Libra female who's a makeup artist, you will not be able to do makeup artistry at this time, so you will not be able to work on your creative expression. Or for example, if you're a hairdresser, you will not be able to do people's hair during this time. So for the Libra people, their actual, creative expression is going to experience some kind of limitation during this time. All right, so Scorpio. Scorpio people, like the Virgos, I can definitely say that they are going to do very well. If I have to give my opinion, I would say that the Virgos and the Scorpios are the two people that will do the best during this time. So Scorpios know exactly how to deal with themselves. Scorpios know exactly how to be alone for prolonged periods of times, and they actually prefer to be alone because majority of your Scorpios think people are stupid. They think people are annoying. So they're actually grateful for this. So what most of your Scorpios will probably end up doing is they'll probably end up looking more into themselves, and they'll probably look more into finding themselves. So because Scorpio is the sign of personal transformation, they will end up really, really looking deep into themselves, and they will discover themselves during this time. Obviously not all of them will, but a big portion of them will. I have noticed over the last month, I have had a massive influx of Scorpio people coming to me for readings. And I do think that because at this time, Scorpios especially are trying to figure out, themselves. They're trying to figure out the meaning of lives and what's going on. Out of all the signs, the Scorpios are the ones who are trying to find answers to what's going on. But the Scorpios aren't the ones who are looking for the answers out there and in other people or in the world. Scorpios are actually trying to find the answers within themselves, and that's quite a good thing. Okay, so then the Saturn has entered Scorpio's 4th house. Now, the 4th house represents the house of home and family. So there is going to be a little bit of suffering when it comes to, how Scorpios feel regarding their home and family. So there might be somewhat of a loss in their family or in the home department. It could be that they possibly can't see their family. They can't spend time with their family right now. But in terms of family, Scorpios are going to experience a lot of suffering right now, more so than the other signs. They're going to miss their families. They're going to be thinking about their families, and they're going to be wanting to be with their families. However, they're going to struggle to be with their families right now. Alrighty, so next we have Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is the sign of freedom. So a lot of your Sagittarians are really going to struggle with this self-isolation. However, a lot of them will be fine with it as well, surprisingly. Let me explain to you why. Now, Sagittarius also represents higher learning. It represents the higher mind, and it also represents spirituality. So although Sagittarius is the sign of freedom, Sagittarians actually want freedom when it comes to their beliefs and their spirituality. So a Sagittarius does not want any restrictions imposed onto what they believe in and what they believe is true. So people have this confused very often. They think that Sagittarius want all this freedom. Sagittarius just want to be free all the time. That's not true. Sagittarians are able to be, in a house for prolonged periods at a time and be completely happy doing this. But where the freedom thing comes in is, like I said, they want freedoms in terms of their values and their beliefs. They do not want people telling them what to believe. Now, your Sagittarians are likely going to be doing so much research right now. Your Sagittarians are going to be learning about, the actual virus and what's going on. They're going to be constantly watching the news, and they're probably also going to research and learn, the things that they've always wanted to learn that they've never had time for. So this is quite a nice thing for the Sagittarians, because you guys will have time to actually pursue the things you wanted to now. You'll be able to learn the things you wanted to now. So with Sagittarius, Saturn has entered your 3rd house of communication. Now, what's going to happen is there is going to be a halt on your communication abilities. Now, I've noticed I have a friend who's a Sagittarius, and she actually deleted Facebook the other day because she's so tired of dealing with people and communicating with them and seeing, what's going on with their lives. So what a lot of Sagittarians are going to do is they're probably going to cut themselves off from the world. They're going to shut themselves off from everybody else because what is going on right now might be a bit much for them to deal with. And the best way for them to deal with it is to maybe just shut themselves off and do research so that they can actually find answers themselves. The Sagittarians are also probably the ones that are so irritated with all the fake news going around right now because it is the sign of truth. So when a Sagittarius sees fake news, it will infuriate them because Sagittarians really, really hate it when people spread lies, when people spread information that is not true. So this is a time when they are going to be educating themselves, and they're probably going to shut down their avenues of communication. So they will not be communicating as much as they usually do. Okay, then we've got Capricorn. So Capricorn is an earth sign as well. And like I said, the earth signs are doing very, very well right now. So Capricorn is likely going to be able to spend more time with their family now than ever before. And they are going to be so, so happy about this. So your Capricorns are the people that are the most hardest working people. They're slightly harder working than Virgos, although some Virgos will get very angry at me for saying this. They do really have the ability to give so much of their energy and their time to something. Now, Capricorns generally work so hard that they don't really have time for their family and their friends and just the people in their home life. This is now a time where they can actually spend time with their family and the people in their home life. They can spend quality time with them. So Capricorn is probably also one of the signs that have been impacted the most severely through this whole situation because there was a very, very significant stellium happening in Capricorn. We had our Saturn and Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. We had the we're having the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction that's coming up in April in Capricorn as well. So Capricorns really have been bombarded with a lot at this time. Out of all the signs, I can definitely say they have been dealing with and going through the most right now. So Capricorns are basically going to get a very, very well-deserved rest. They're going to get a rest where they can spend the time they've always wanted to with their family, and they're going to do this, and they're actually going to be happy. Now, in the back of their minds, they are going to be a little bit irritated and a little bit uneasy because they don't know what's going to happen with their work. And as you know, Capricorns are obsessed with work. However, what the best thing to do is to just try and remain in the moment and enjoy the time that you have now with your family, because when you're back to work again, you're not going to have all this time to spend with them again. Alrighty, then you have Capricorn has Saturn going through their second house of money, finances, and disposable cash. So your Capricorns are likely going to experience the biggest impact when it comes to their finances right now. So they are not going to be able to spend as much money as they usually do. There's going to be a major halt in their income right now. And that is going to be very tricky for them to deal with because they are going to have to readjust their spending habits as well as their daily lifestyle due to this. Okay, so then we have Aquarius. So your Aquarians, you would think that they're going to struggle because they're an air sign, but actually not. Aquarians are very, very capable of being happy where they are. So an Aquarius person has a very, very optimistic outlook on life generally, and an Aquarius person usually sees the glass as half full as opposed to half empty. So whereas a lot of your air signs like Gemini and Libra are going to be like, damn it, I can't go out and have drinks with my friends. I can't go out and socialize. I can't do this. I can't do that. Aquarius will not see it as a negative thing. Aquarius will see it as, oh, well, this is what it is right now. I guess I have to deal with it, and I guess I have to accept it and just basically do what I can do. So the Aquarians aren't going to have an incredibly negative reaction to self-isolation. They will realize that it is what is required of them, and they will very willingly do it. Now, your Aquarians are also the kind of people that really know how to keep themselves entertained and how to keep themselves happy without having other people around. Now, I know that can sound somewhat contradictory because Aquarius is the sign of friendship, it's the sign of community, but just hear me out. Even though Aquarians are very, very reliant on their friends and they are very reliant on other people to be happy and to basically find themselves and to find a sense of their own identity, Aquarians are incredibly, incredibly intelligent. They have such vast minds, and when they actually put their mind to something, they're able to focus on it without worrying about anything else. So your Aquarians are likely going to pursue tasks, and they're going to do things during self-isolation that's going to keep them so busy. It's going to keep their minds so busy that they're not going to be worrying about socializing. They're not going to be thinking about all the negative things going on. So Aquarians do have this very rare ability to basically filter out all the negative thoughts and all the negative things going on around them, and to just focus on the bigger picture and to focus on what is important. Okay, so Aquarius is, so Saturn is moving through Aquarius's first house, which is the house of self-identity. Now, Aquarians are going to experience a major halt when it comes to their own self-identity and their own self-expression. So a lot of your Aquarians are going to want to, create a future for themselves. They're going to want to pursue their goals. They're going to want to pursue their futures, but they won't be able to. There's going to be limitations imposed onto them that's going to stop them from actually becoming who they want to become. Because the first house does represent what you want to become. It represents what you want to show to the world. Now, it's going to be very, very tricky for them to, reach that point where they want to be. So it can manifest differently for different Aquarians in their life. However, whatever it is that they do want to achieve and pursue right now, they're not going to be able to because of the self-isolation. Okay, and then the last sign is Pisces. So Pisces people are actually going to deal with it very, very well. Like I said, the water signs and the earth signs are going to not struggle that much at this time. Pisces is actually the sign of isolation. Pisces is the sign that also represents hospitals, and it basically represents, removing yourself from society. Pisces is a weird sign. Pisces basically represents like your misfits in society. Pisces represents people with mental illnesses. It represents your mystics. It represents like the people that, people don't accept and people don't understand. It represents people that are incredibly different. Now, the thing about Pisces is symbolized by the fish. And as you know, a fish just basically goes with the flow of the water. They just swim with the current and they just go with what's happening. Now, out of all the signs, Pisces is probably going to experience the least resistance to what is going on. They're not going to resist it, and they're going to accept it, and they're going to be welcoming it into their lives. Whereas all the other signs are saying right now, oh goodness, oh no, this whole situation is affecting me so badly. My life is in shatters. Everything is in shatters. Nothing makes sense right now. And they really are feeding energy into this resistance regarding what is happening. Whereas the Pisces people aren't going to resist it. The Pisces people are just going to think, well, you know what? This is how it is. This is what the universe wanted for Earth right now, and this is what we have to accept, and this is what we have to go through. So, out of all the signs, Pisces people likely won't mind self isolation because they'll understand it. They'll understand why. They're not going to be resistant towards it, and because Pisces people also are more prone to self isolation. The three signs that are more prone to isolating themselves are Pisces, Scorpio, and Virgo. So these three signs will likely really, really enjoy self-isolation. So Saturn has entered the 12th house for Pisces, and what is going to happen is that they are going to have a very difficult time understanding their own thoughts, understanding, their own ideas, and just basically making sense of their own minds. What is a very strange thing is that the 12th house is something that does represent hospitalization and that kind of thing. And when Saturn goes into the 12th house, it does mean that a lot of the Pisces people will not have access to healthcare or hospitalization. There will be somewhat of a restriction in terms of this. Now, that's not to say that if any Pisces people need healthcare, they're not going to get it. But in terms of, the transits, that's basically just what it represents. Now, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Okay. And then just the last thing that I wanted to mention about Pisces is that Pisces people are very, very intuitive. Pisces people are generally quite psychic and they're very, very receptive. However, with Saturn in the 12th house, there's going to be a block on their receptiveness. So a lot of your Pisces people will generally be able to, pick up on the undercurrents around them. They can feel the energies. They can sense things. They just know things. They have this very, very strong intuition in them. But this intuition that they have is going to leave them. It's going to disappear for a while. And they're kind of going to feel like they're not connected. They're going to feel like their sense of connectedness with the greater consciousness and with the world is lost. They are going to feel a bit more, disconnected than what they usually do. Okay, guys, so like I said, Saturn is going to be in Aquarius up until the 1st of July. So the self-isolation period is most likely going to affect most of you guys up until the 1st of July. From then, Saturn is going to enter Capricorn again, and then things are going to change again. So throughout this period, what I can advise to you guys is use this time that you have now to work on yourself, to go into some deep introspection, to do some inner reflection and get to know yourself. Because as you know, life is so busy, life is so demanding, and you constantly have to give your attention to everything else, to work, to family, to friends, or whatever the case may be. It's so difficult to just find a moment and space and time for yourself. Now, I know in South Africa, we started our self-isolation yesterday, and it's for a total of 21 days. They've actually put our country in lockdown, so it's actually illegal for us to leave our house for non-essential reasons. So if you're also in a situation where, you pretty much can't leave the house, or you're just choosing to isolate yourself, use this time for yourself. It is very rare that humanity will be given this time to actually, just deal with themselves and do what they want to do, be in their own space and that kind of thing. When this time is over, it's going to be back to how it was. So really, really make use of this time and make the best of it that you possibly can. Okay, so that is basically just my little breakdown on how I think that the self-isolation, there it is again, I really can't say self-isolation, I keep saying self-isolation, I can't say that word. But anyway, this is just my breakdown on how I think that self-isolation is going to be affecting the signs. If you guys, would like to add anything or anything like that, then you guys can add it to the comment section of this video. If you guys would like to see some more astrology content and some updates on the astrological transits, then do subscribe to my channel. And if you enjoyed the stream, then please give it a thumbs up. I really hope that you guys have a good self-isolation period. I hope that you guys reflect on, the good things that you've done in life, the bad things that you've done in life, and that you actually deal with yourself during this time instead of trying to, distract yourself with other things. Use this time for yourself. Okay, guys, I'll see you guys next time.